Well, the question is not who is the new host of Jeopardy, it's how many people are hosting Jeopardy.
That's why you're my favorite host. I mean, what else am I going to say?
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Schneider, and honestly, I wasn't going to make a video on this. I figured it wasn't much of a surprise, and I didn't think I had too much to say. But some of you asked me for my thoughts, and goodness knows it's been far too long since I last talked game shows on this channel. So with that, let's revisit Mayim Bialik's time as Jeopardy host, and what exactly led up to a recent departure, at least from a syndicated version. Like both Ken Jennings and Mike Richards, Bialik took a couple of weeks as a guest host before eventually being named to a full-time hosting position. Of all the different guest hosts that we had during that time, Bialik was one of the more popular ones. And it honestly made sense for a person with her resume to take her turn as a guest host. Not only is she a popular actress most viewers would be familiar with, she's also a legitimate neuroscientist, receiving her PhD in 2007. That's right, Bialik didn't just play a neuroscientist on television, she has a very accomplished background in the subject. So to be completely fair, those that were arguing Jennings should be the permanent host because of his intellect have to grant Bialik the same qualifications. And it turns out Bialik was indeed popular enough that the show decided to keep her in the Jeopardy family long term. When Richards was originally announced as the host of A Daily Show, it was also announced Bialik would be handling any primetime versions, including special tournaments and spin-off programs. Richards then stepped down in a controversy that's not really worth bringing up again here, but this opened the door for Bialik to return to A Daily Show and finish out the season alongside Jennings. Now exactly 2 years ago, I uploaded a video looking back at the Richards saga. And at the end, I made the case for keeping the status quo, so to speak. Let's give Ken Jennings the daily syndicated show, give Mayim Bialik the primetime specials, and find a way to keep Michael Davies running the program for years to come. And just so we're clear, a revisiting Michael Davies video is coming eventually as well. There's a lot to talk about since we last discussed him on this channel. We'll save most of those details for another day, but for the purposes of this video, Davies decided that his plans for the show were so grand that Jeopardy would need multiple hosts to keep the show going strong into the future.
He claims they have so much Jeopardy to make, so many plans for the future, that they always knew they would need multiple hosts for the franchise.
Now again, if this meant having a daytime host and a primetime host, I'd have no problem with that. It would hardly be unprecedented in the game show world. Bob Barker didn't always host the primetime Price is Rights, and Al Roker hosted the original Celebrity Family Feud instead of then-current Feud host John O'Hurley. But the fact that Davies insisted on splitting the Daily Show between Jennings and Bialik never sat well with me. It was a puzzling decision to say the least. How do you maintain the show's identity, let alone build a new one, if viewers don't even know for sure who's going to be standing behind the lectern hosting that particular episode they're about to watch? Regardless, the decision was made and Jeopardy now had 2 permanent hosts. And for the last 2+ years, I have to tell you, it has been absolutely impossible to scroll through the comments on a Jeopardy social media post and not see fans of the show arguing over who the better host is. Jennings and Bialik's respective fans were constantly pitting the two against one another. Some even said they wouldn't bother watching the show until the host they preferred came back. And that, I believe, proves my point. You see, Alex Trebek was Jeopardy. He was part of the show's identity. I'm not saying Ken Jennings or Mayim Bialik are Alex Trebek, but can you see the problem with constantly rotating them in and out for one another? Just imagine if The Price is Right had done this, giving both Drew Carey and Mike Richards the job after Bob Barker retired. And again, Drew Carey isn't Bob Barker, but he's host of a show for over a decade and a half now. You can't argue he's not part of a show's identity at this point. Which brings me to my larger point here. This was the advantage that Jennings always had over Bialik when it came to the permanent hosting job. He's been a part of Jeopardy's identity for almost 20 years now. That's a place where Bialik simply can't catch up. It's not her fault, and I don't think it takes away from her ability to host the show. I thought she did a good job. But to me, there's just something poetic about Jennings being Trebek's successor. The greatest contestant from his time as the host takes his place. The student becomes the master, so to speak. Heck, Trebek even left Jennings his cufflinks for his first taping. What does that tell you of how highly he thought of the humble software engineer from Washington? Hey everyone, so it's Future Ben editing this here, and I've since gone back and rewatched the interview, which I'm about to play for you all now, and it turns out it was actually Alex's wife, Jean, that gifted Ken Alex's cufflinks after Alex had already passed away. So whether or not Alex specifically left them for Ken or not, I suppose, is a little bit unclear, but I still think that speaks volumes to what Alex's family as a whole thought of Ken, and that obviously includes Alex himself. So I still think it's worth a mention, and here's the interview.
What a lovely gesture that was from Jean, at a time that was very hard for her family, dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of challenges. I am wearing them today. My Alex Trebek cufflinks are the only cufflinks I own. They're kind of a good luck charm for me here.
If Jennings had just been named the host of a daily syndicated show from the start, I don't think very many fans would have had a problem with that. And isn't it poetic irony that over 3 years later, that's exactly where we've ended up anyway? But how exactly did we end up there? Well, it kind of happened naturally. It's the same reason why so many of your favorite shows went on hiatus, your most highly anticipated movies got stuck in development hell, and a bunch of unscripted crap started popping up. The writers and actors strikes. Now, while the writer's strike affected Jeopardy as a whole, the actor's strike affected Bialik. She initially stepped away on her own in solidarity with the writers before going on strike herself with her union SAG-AFTRA. So even if she wanted to return to hosting, she would have been prevented from doing so until the strike was resolved. So Jennings stepped up and started hosting everything, including the second season of Celebrity Jeopardy in primetime, which is still in progress right now on ABC. And then, just last month, shortly after the strikes had been resolved, Bialik released this statement. Sony has informed me that I will no longer be hosting the syndicated version of Jeopardy! I am incredibly honored to have been nominated for a Primetime Emmy for hosting this year, and I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to have been a part of a Jeopardy family. For all of you who have supported me through this incredible journey, and to the fans, contestants, writers, staff, and crew of America's favorite quiz show, thank you. Shortly thereafter, the official Jeopardy account followed it up with a statement of their own. We made the decision to have one host for the syndicated show next season to maintain continuity for our viewers, and Ken Jennings will be the sole host for syndicated Jeopardy! We are truly grateful for all of Mayim's contributions to Jeopardy! And we hope to continue to work with her on primetime specials. Now, the wording in each of these statements appears to leave the door open for Bialik to remain in the Jeopardy family in the future. Bialik specifically noted she had been informed she would no longer be hosting the syndicated version of the show, and the show itself explicitly stated that they'd welcome her back for any primetime versions. So any notions that Bialik was straight up fired are misleading at best and straight up false at worst. I feel a bit bad for her. The strike situation wasn't her fault, but her time away also allowed Jennings' identity with the show to grow even stronger. And as the show itself appears to finally have acknowledged, that continuity is important. I do also want to say congratulations to Ken Jennings. This has been a long time coming, and looking back, this entire saga could have been avoided if the most obvious choice from the start had been the only choice from the start. On second thought, I'm not sure if Jennings' schedule would have allowed it given his roles on The Chase and Masterminds of the time, but in a perfect world, I think there would have been a simple line of succession straight from Trebek to Jennings. And I do want to say all the best to Mayim Bialik as well, and I would absolutely welcome her back on primetime specials. As I said earlier, it's not entirely unprecedented to have different hosts for different versions, even within the Jeopardy family. Jeff Probst did a rock and roll Jeopardy spinoff in the late 90s, and Dan Patrick did sports Jeopardy in the mid-2010s. But I'll pass the conversation on to you now. Did you prefer Ken? Did you prefer Mayim? Do you still prefer someone else like Buzzy Cohen? Would you welcome Mayim back at this point? Keep it civil, but let me know in the comments. And until next time, thanks for watching.
Blossom, you left the Pulitzer Prize ceremony to be with us today, and we are most appreciative of that.
Thank you, Alex.